1, 2, 3, 4, now she's ready, now it's time. A Boston girl who knows true crime. She got cash, attitude, but a person in a got mood. She knows Sunday, she knows summer, now she's ready, now it's time. A Boston girl who knows true crime. She got cash, attitude, but a person in a got mood. She knows Sunday, she knows summer, Danny, after dark, rock.
Hi, and welcome to Danny After Dark. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss a notification or a new episode. Tonight is a special case review episode because it is a collaboration with, you know her, you love her. She's not just my Aunty Memie, she's your Aunty Memie too. Hi!
Hi, everybody.
How's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I am look at everybody in the chat, finally. Calm down.
I see nobody, so.
So I am very excited to do this collaboration. So this was actually a case suggestion that you recommended that we do. So for those of you who have not seen the title of the episode, it is on Marie Delphine LaLaurie. So I never heard of this case. How did you hear about this case?
I was looking for serial killers from the 1800s and she popped up. So I said, oh, let me send that to Danielle.
Awesome. So before we jump into the episode, let's just give a quick hello to those in the chat. Hey, James Watson, Kane, Fiddleford, Russell, Ringo the dancing dog. I have not seen you before here, but I'm obsessed with your avatar. That is such a cute little dog. Welcome. Let's see. Mr. Beckham is in the chat. We have a lot of hey Aunty Memie. A lot of love for Aunty Memie. I'm fully expecting everybody here not to be here for me at all. Lil Milky, hello. Duda Man, hi. Paulcast is here saying hello too. Wolf is here saying, hey, Aunty Memie. So for those of you who are watching and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know who Aunty Memie is. Well, you're living under a rock, and go on over to the Paulcast, and we have had Memie on, three, maybe 4 times, 3? And talking about the S.K. Pierce Haunted Mansion, amongst many other things. And it was cool because when Beckham and Shelley got to come to Massachusetts to visit, we went to the mansion. So that was really cool. So go on over and check that out to get a more in-depth idea of who Aunty Memie is. Okay, Ringo says, I'm Athena. Do you know Athena? I don't offhand, but that's okay. All right. Either way, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And again, I'm obsessed with your avatar. I love animals. So what we're going to do is kind of go through the case just as a whole. So if you guys kind of want to make Athena from book club.
My book club? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yes, I didn't know.
That's awesome.
I didn't know she was Ringo the dancing dog.
Oh, love it. Well, thank you. Thank you, Athena, for joining. So yeah, we're going to go through the case and then we'll kind of do any questions or comments at the very end. And if you guys are familiar with this case, by all means, kind of follow along in the chat. And I know some of you people had mentioned that you knew of the case through, and I never watched this show. Was it American Horror Story? Was that the one where Kathy Bates played her? Yeah. I didn't see that, but I know some of you did. I know Paul had mentioned that he knew this case because of that episode. So yeah. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive on into this Aunty Memie suggestion case of Marie Delphine LaLaurie. So Delphine LaLaurie was born in not 1975, goodness, 1775 in New Orleans. She was one of 5 children. Her father was Bartholomew Lewis McCarty, and oh my God, I messed up my typing. Oh, I said that twice. Sorry. Yes, so that was her father, and was and he brought the family to New Orleans from Ireland around 1730. Her mother was Marie Jean Lovable, also known as the Widow Lecompte. And if I'm mispronouncing that, my apologies, whose marriage to Bartholomew was her second. Both of Delphine's parents were prominent members of the New Orleans white Creole community. Delphine's cousin, Augustine de McCarty, was mayor of New Orleans from 1815 to 1820. In June 11th, 1800, Delphine married Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo. He was a Caballero de la Royal de Carlos, which means a high-ranking Spanish officer at the St. Louis Cathedral in New Orleans.
And by 1804, Don Ramon had risen to the position of Consul General for Spain in Louisiana. Also that same year, Delphine and Don Ramon traveled to Spain. Grace King wrote in 1921 that the trip was Don Ramon's military punishment and that Delphine met the Queen, who was impressed by Delphine's beauty. Stanley Arthur in 1936, his report that the trip differed. He stated that on March 26, 1804, Don Ramon was called to court of Spain to take his place at the court as befitting his new position, but that Ramon never arrived in Spain because he died in Havana en route to Madrid. Either way, during the voyage, Delphine gave birth to a daughter named Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez y Angula, or Angula, de la Candelaria, nicknamed Borquita. I can't, these too many words.
These names are crazy.
Named Borquita, Delphine and her daughter returned to New Orleans afterwards. Borquita means little mouth. June 1808. Oh, I'm sorry, that's your turn.
So in June 1808, Delphine married Jean Blanc. He was a prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, and legislator. Jean then purchased a house at 409 Royal Street in New Orleans for the family. This house later became known as the Villa Blanc. Delphine had 4 more children with Jean: Mary Louise Pauline, Louise Marie Laurie, Marie Louise Jean, and Jean Pierre Pauline Blanc. And in 1816, Jean Blanc had passed away.
On May 25th, 1825, Delphine married her third husband, Leonard Louis Nicholas LaLaurie. He was a physician who was much younger than her. In 1831, Delphine bought property at 1140 Royal Street, and she managed this home on her own name with little involvement from her husband. 1832, she built a 3-story mansion there, complete with attached slave quarters. She lived there with her husband and her 2 daughters and maintained a central position in the social circles of New Orleans.
On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out at the Royal Street mansion. First responders were horrified to discover bound slaves within the house who showed evidence of torture over a long period. What police and the community would learn was that the LaLauries maintained several Black slaves in slave quarters attached to the Royal Street mansion. Harriet Martineau, writings in 1838, recounted tales told to her, claiming that the LaLaurie slaves were observed to be, quote, singularly haggard and wretched, end quote. However, court records of the time show Delphine emancipated 2 of her own slaves, Jean Louise in 1819 and Devonshire in 1832. And if I mispronounced any of those, my apologies. One of LaLaurie's neighbors saw one of the LaLaurie slaves, a 12-year-old girl named Leah, fall to her death from the roof of the Royal Street Mansion while she was trying to avoid punishment from a whip-wielding Delphine. The beating was triggered when Leah had been brushing Delphine's hair and hit a snag. This caused Delphine to grab a whip and chase her. Leah's body was subsequently burned on the mansion's grounds.
This incident led to an investigation of the LaLauries in which they were found guilty in illegal cruelty and forced to forfeit 9 slaves. However, these 9 slaves were then brought back by the LaLauries through the intermediary of one of their relatives. Another report was that the Delphines kept her cook chained to the kitchen stove and beat her daughters when they attempted to feed the slaves. On the night of the fire, the police and fire marshals found the 76-year-old cook chained to the stove by her ankle. She later confessed to them that she had set the fire as a suicide attempt, for fear of her punishment being taken to the uppermost room, because she said anyone who had been taken up there never came back.
That's horrific. That is absolutely horrific. Oh, man. So the police were not the only ones who had responded to the fire. Bystanders responded as well. Quote, "Where are all Madame LaLaurie's servants, that they do not help in the efforts to save," end quote. Delphine met these questions with pretty much evasive answers, such as, "Never mind the servants, save my valuables, and this way, gentlemen, this way," end quote. Okay. Someone began whispering that the servants were chained and locked up behind barred doors in the slave quarter. Quote, the servants, end quote, rose from 100 different voices. Quote, "There are human beings locked in those rooms who will be roasted alive in the flames," end quote. The bystanders attempted to enter the slave quarters to ensure that everybody had been evacuated. However, the LaLauries refused to hand over the keys. So the bystanders, they broke down the doors to the slave quarters and found, quote, 7 slaves more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other, end quote. They claimed to have been imprisoned there for several months. One of those bystanders was Judge Jean Francois Canoge. And if I mispronounced that, my apologies. He claimed that when he questioned Madame LaLaurie's husband about the slaves, he was told in an insolent manner that, quote, "some people had better stay at home rather than come to others' houses to dictate laws and meddle with other people's business," end quote.
When the rest of the community learned about the tortured slaves, a mob of local citizens attacked the LaLaurie residence and demolished and destroyed everything upon which they could lay their hands on. A sheriff and his officers were required to disperse the crowd, and by the time the mob left, the Royal Street property had sustained major damage, with scarcely anything remaining but the walls. The tortured slaves were not taken to the hospital, but instead were taken to the local jail so they could be available for public viewing. That's not right.
That's crazy.
The New Orleans Bee reported that by April 12th, 2 days later, up to 4,000 people had attended to view the tortured slaves to convince themselves of their suffering. The Pittsfield Sun, citing the New Orleans Advertiser, claimed that 2 of the slaves found in the LaLaurie mansion had died since their rescue, and added, "We understand that in digging the yard, bodies have been disinterred."
Disinterred.
Yeah, forgive me. In the condemned well in the grounds of the mansion have been uncovered. Others, particularly that of a child, were found. Delphine immediately fled New Orleans, taking a coach to the waterfront and traveling by schooner from there to Mobile, Alabama, and then off to Paris. The houses remained ruined at least until 1836, but at some point prior to 1888, they were unrecognizably restored.
So over the following decades, the property was used as a public high school, a conservatory of music, tenement, a refuge, for young delinquents, a bar, a furniture store, and a luxury apartment building. In April 2007, Nicolas Cage, famous actor, bought the house for $3.45 million. Nicholas had made the comment, quote, other people have beachfront property. I have coastfront property. That's why I always say I have not experienced anything, but I like a bit of mystery. And the house has such mystery to it. Some of the stories about it are pretty horrific, end quote. Nicholas ran into some financial problems, and the house ultimately went into foreclosure. And on November 13th, 2009, the house was listed for auction. It was valued at $3.5 million. And then Michael Whalen purchased the house in 2010, and he is still the current owner.
Delphine LaLaurie went on to live her life and not be brought back to justice for what she has done. The circumstances and details of her death are varied, and George Washington Cable recounted in 1888 that Delphine had died in France in a boar hunting accident on December 7th, 1842. And there's conflicting stories about that, but this is the one I'm going to stick with.
Yep.
In the late 1930s, Eugene Bax, not quite sure, so forgive me, who served as sexton to St. Louis Cemetery number 1 until 1924, discovered an old cracked copper plate in alley 4 of the cemetery. The inscription on the plate read, Madame LaLaurie, née Marie Delphine McCarty, décédée à Paris le 7 December 1842, et l'âge
That's what I think.
Yeah, day 6. To this day, the Royal Street mansion where the LaLauries lived is still standing and is a prominent New Orleans landmark. However, it is not open to the public. No members of the public have been inside the house since 1932, and the house to this day is still a popular tourist attraction. It's even described as the city's most haunted ghost hunting tours. Well, during ghost tours. Too many words. So when they give the ghost tours, everybody stands outside and they all give the elaborate stories of everything that's happening outside. So
yeah,
I believe Mr. Jinx has been there.
I thought it was Russell.
Russell, yes, Russell's been there.
Yeah.
So he can give you elaborate stories of what's happened outside.
So that is the case of Marie Delphine LaLaurie. So, that is... I just have to say, so I'm curious what you guys think in the chat about this case. Again, if you know it, if you haven't, if you've been there. Yeah, Russell's like, yep, that was me. So it reminds me, if anybody's familiar with the Bell Gunness case, it kind of has that similar story to me in regards to the house. The property sets on fire, although in the Bell Gunness case, ultimately allegedly her remains were in there, but some people think she escaped. But then there's all the speculation of how did she actually die? Where was she? There's all these sightings. So I saw that a little bit with this case. So it reminded me of that, but as well as marrying multiple partners, that kind of reminded me of that. But what I couldn't believe when doing the research for this case, Mimi, was the cruelty to where she was holding these, the slaves that she had and these servants, prisoners, but that when they were finally rescued, they were brought to a jail for public display.
Well, I guess back then you can have slaves, but you weren't allowed to torture them. But she tortured them, so everybody got angry at the fact that she did that to them.
Right. I would argue that the public humiliation is a huge form of torture in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, although those thousands of people coming in, that was shocking to me to learn that. But
it's like an animal in a cage. It's just like, wait a minute.
They'd already been through such a traumatic thing, and then on top of that, I would say I would expect more from law enforcement, but I mean,
We're talking the 1800s. Yeah.
I know, and they're not that great today either.
And this is
but-
the book that I was reading, Madame LaLaurie.
Mhm.
That's an actual photo of painting of her.
Really? I'm going to make you big. Hold on.
Oh, there I am, Mistress of the Haunted House. That's the actual, there we go. The actual portrait that was painted of her. And it's in the wall of her, not in the wall, but it's hanging on the wall, was originally hanging on the wall, and now it's in a library, a museum, I gather. And this was this is the actual one. Let me open that up, if I can. That one. And that's when the queen was enthralled by her beauty, by that photo. The photo, but what she actually looked like.
Would you recommend that book if people are interested in learning more about Marie Delphine?
Yeah, I thought it was a good book. By Carolyn Morrow Long. They have more books on it, but I found this one to be a good read.
Good to know. Good to know.
And you can borrow mine. You don't have to go out and buy it.
Yay!
Or
Score!
drive by and I'll toss it out the window.
Oh man. So we have a few people have come in the chat kind of as we were going on. I tried to make sure I brought everybody up and made sure I saw you there. So do you know Gregory?
Oh, hi Hogue. Hi Hose. Yes, I do. I used
Leave
to work
it up
with
to
them.
Mimi to come up with this bedtime story. Oh man. Yep, that's her.
I used to work with him.
Beckham is here, and Beckham is asking what her official body count was.
Oh, you asked me that question. She had, I want to say it was, I don't remember now. I know there was it around 90? Or was it a lot less? Well, I was just reading one of a woman that had 400 that she murdered too. That's a good case to go with, Danielle. Her name was Elizabeth. She was in the 50s.
Oh, Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah. I was just looking
Yeah.
at that one. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And they were all women.
Oh God. Yeah. So Beckham, for this one, it's a little tricky only because
I know every slave that she had, there was always somebody that was murdered.
And
I had
I was
count
going to
in my
say,
head.
like, you know, so some of the slaves that were ultimately, like, I would consider the ones that did survive and ultimately had to go through that whole, you know, public viewing thing. Like, I would consider them victims in this. I know that's not what Beckham's getting at in regards to an official body count, but
right. I don't remember because they found a lot in the backyard and that were buried, and I don't know how many she got rid of. No, every time that they brought slaves in, they couldn't figure out why they were a lot missing as well. And I had the body count, and I don't remember the body count either.
Oh,
so,
no.
I mean, I can
that's all right. I know where to find Beckham. I know where to find Beckham to give him that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even the comment from the what was it? The woman who did the cooking, who locked herself, you know, chained herself and said she started the fire and said that was better than going, you know, to that one room where when people go there, they never come out. So, oh man, that's just a tragic.
I had a picture of the cages that they used to have them in too, and now I couldn't find the cages. I'm like, I saw it in the book somewhere, and I'm like, I couldn't find it in the book. I'm like, where the hell could I put it? I was going to print out the pictures too, because they had them in the little cages, and they would spin them around and try to, you know, pull them there, and you know, they tortured them and stuck them in there too. And that was Merlin. He's just flying around the house.
Aunty Mimi's a cat person too, so yes.
I have two.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't necessarily always show a lot of pictures when I cover the cases. I mean, as you know from what you see, because I mean, a lot of them can just be so graphic that I kind of leave it up to, the person, the audience, if that's something that they want to look into and kind of get a little more knowledgeable on the case, kind of go down that road, just because, like I said, some of the pictures can just be so tragic, and especially where there's cases that involve children. Like here, she didn't spare any children. So I try to not, because that's just, it's one of those very
these were
sensitive
just the adult cages that just hang from these weren't anything that had involved children. So I said, well, I'll just show a couple. These were just the drawings. These weren't the actual, they were just a drawing of the cages.
Yeah, but it still gives you a really good idea of what was going on. And
Right.
I try not to show that. We can talk about it, but I don't like to show the pictures.
It doesn't bother me.
We have Lewis,
Hi,
in
Lewis.
the house. Hey, Lewis. Let's see. We had a good answer. What was, so to the body count, James Watson said higher than yours, Beckham. I'm so mean. Clifford Crawford, Nicolas Cage is a little wacky.
No.
Little bit, but yeah, he lost the house.
He lost a lot of things.
Ringo says she was mentally deranged and cruel.
Yep.
Absolutely spot on. Let's see. Kane asks what happened to her children.
Her children ended up taking over the mansion, but they ended up moving with her to Paris because they didn't want to be involved in any of the scandal either. So they all ended up going to support her, and they moved to Paris. She does not, to this day, have any documented, Merlin's going around the circle, does not have any documented ancestry. Nothing.
Really?
They can't find anything that has carried on her tradition.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I was reading up and I'm trying to find anything, and that nothing.
You know who we need to get on the case is Liz. Liz is really good with that, like ancestry, DNA stuff, and tracking family lineage.
She was on the other night. She was on the other night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We need to get Liz involved. Bill says, isn't Mimi's house haunted as well?
Yes. And Kenny hangs out now.
Yes, I have experienced something at Mimi's house. I didn't for many, many years, but then I did. So yeah. Hey, yeah. Sadie, welcome.
He's at the mansion now too.
Sorry, what was that?
Kenny hangs out at the mansion too.
Oh. If anybody's wondering, if you came in a little late and you're wondering what the mansion we're referring to is, we're talking about the S.K. Pierce Haunted Mansion for Mimi, but in regards to Marie Delphine LaLaurie, that's its own. So, yeah. Mr. Beckham is saying that picture of Marie Delphine LaLaurie looks like Liz.
It does?
Interesting.
She has her hair up. Liz had her hair down.
Beckham, put some glasses on, for Christ's sakes.
I'll give you mine. Mine are they're all glared in the light behind me.
Clifford Crawford is being mean. He wants you to come out with a Boston accent. Oh, come on.
Who, me?
Yeah.
You want me to say my car? I parked my car in Harvard Yard.
Oh, man. Let's see. Remember, folks, if the crime is punishable with a fine, it just means pay to play. And James says that looks like Liz. Super weird. You guys are weird. Anyway, yeah. So I would definitely recommend, if people are interested in a bit more of this case, to kind of do a bit of a deep dive. Aunty Memie did mention a great book to read if you want to get a little bit more into the case, and that book has some great pictures like you just showed. Again, I have not seen, did you see American Horror Story? Did you see Kathy Bates play her at all?
I pulled it up the other day. We started watching it. It's episode 3 of The Coven. And it has who is it? What's the actress's name?
Kathy Bates.
It has Kathy Bates, but it also has who's the other one that's popular out there in New Orleans? oh, I can't remember her name now. See, I watched it now. Let's see. Dementia. No. Okay.
It will come to you like right as we end the show because that's
Of
always
course.
the way it
Of course
works.
it will. The other New Orleans, never mind because it's coming in and it's going out. It's just doing circles in my head.
No, that's all right.
And Hoser, I don't want to hear one word from you.
Oh man. And you guys, if you guys wonder where I get it,
Yeah.
my
See,
mispronunciations and my
family.
forgetfulness. Oh man.
Yeah. Who's the voodoo
Ringo
queen out
says I
there?
did. So you saw the American Horror Story,
The Coven.
the Coven episode. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious for anybody that did see it, if how they felt Kathy did in that role. I mean, I have not seen it personally, so I can't say one way or another, but if anybody has seen it, I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Paulcast saw it.
Paul saw it, but he has already left the chat because he's too cool to be here. No, it's prime family time right now for him. So
Well, he just wanted to see me,
Clifford
that's all.
Crawford is making a comparison that they had cages at the Whiskey A Go-Go in 69. For Christ's sakes.
Well, they had cages in here, so he wanted to, add the cages over there.
Oh man.
That was the thing back then in the 60s. And the Go-Go Girls and the dancing in the, the cages and dancing on stage. Yeah.
Little bit before my time, but
I
that's
was
all
there.
right.
I was
That's
in
all
the
right.
60s.
Kind of as we kind of wind this down, one thing that I found interesting was that Michael Whalen, so he purchased the house in 2010. He's still the owner. I couldn't find, I know it's closed to the public, but I couldn't find necessarily what he's doing with it now. If it's just a family home, or like what if he uses it for anything outside of that. I couldn't really find anything.
I know
So
it's a family home, but I don't know.
it's quite a big family home.
It's a 3-story family home. It's right on a main street too. I thought it would be pushed back, but it's right on the main street.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't even remember what he does for work, but they just do the tours right in front and they talk about it. So I don't know why they just don't open it up. I don't know what it looks like inside. You don't really see pictures of it.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of pictures I saw like on Instagram of, like you mentioned at the end of the episode, like when there's like the ghost tours and you kind of go around and they can't go in, but they'll say,
right.
oh, this is the house and so on and so forth. And there seem to be a lot of people taking photos outside of this mansion. So
right.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about what Russell thinks because he was there. I've never been there because if it entitles an airplane, you won't see me going anywhere. Not happening. I'll ask for projector, but I'm not taking a plane.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm curious. I know, Russell, like you said, he said to us that he had been there. So that's pretty cool. I always like them when people, if I'm covering something and they're like, oh, I'm from this area, or, oh, I know these, there's some type of connection. And I think that's pretty cool because I haven't been, so.
Yeah. No, but you're going somewhere soon.
Yes, I am in a few weeks. Everybody stay tuned. Exciting things in the works. Russell says it's like Salem where several companies are doing haunted tours.
Yeah, they do it up front.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense, Russell.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh my God. Like you guys are like saying it looks just like Liz. That's so, you guys are, I don't know. I'll have to message her after.
What's he want? Put the pictures together side by side.
Let's see. Clifford says, yay, reminds me of being stationed at Fort Devens. Thank you, Mimi. Russell says, the tour guide told us that Madame LaLaurie really fled to the north side of Lake Pontchartrain instead of France, and that no one wanted to chase her out in the swamp.
There's just so many different different stories. It depends on who you talk to. Some said she was by the boars in the hunting, and then others say that she died from a mental illness, or she had mental illness, she died of this illness, and it's just so many different stories that you hear from other people. So it's like, which one's true, which one's not? And her daughter said, no, she didn't have mental illness, she died of an illness. And then Merlin, another newspaper, says, no, she had mental illness. So there's just so many different things floating around.
Yeah.
He's knocking my water bottles off the counter because he wants attention.
Typical cat.
Yeah.
And I know your cats, and they're super cute, so I'm totally fine with it. But yeah, like I said, it reminds me of Bal Guinness, where there's all these rumors of, yes, she died this way, or no, that's not true. And there's all these theories, and we're never going to know. We're never going to know which one was the exact one. And yeah, like you said, it's kind of such a shame that her lineage, like it kind of just stopped, which I wonder if that's really true.
Well, they said where she's buried in New Orleans, they said, no, well, she's not really there. Merlin, stop it. That she's not really there. She's buried in Paris. And then you read, where is she buried in Paris? No, she's in New Orleans. So they don't really know where she is. It's just like, okay, it says her thing is her, gravestone, her headstone's there. But then they say, no, she's not. So is she or is she not? You don't know. Not unless it really rains out and her body comes floating up to the top like everybody else's does. But,
And that would be a whole thing in itself.
Well, they say they all bury them standing up and they just keep sinking down. So I think, no, thanks.
Oh, gosh.
Never been in their cemeteries either.
Let's see. Russell's saying, settle down, Merlin.
Well, he wants Mummy's attention.
Beckham saying, I'm going to sponsor Aunty Memie for a ghost hunt trip at the Queen Mary 2025.
I know. I know, because we all have to go.
Yeah, Beckham's been pushing that for a while.
Well, he sent me one of the pictures of the little girl.
Russell saying that's the same cemetery that Marie, I'm totally going to butcher this, LaLaurie is buried in.
Yes.
Beckham, Danny, are serial killers considered mentally ill? Beckham, of course you would ask that at the very end. That there's more of like a triad of behaviors that are typical with, serial killers that we can get into at Danny after, like one of the regular Danny After Darks, because I would totally nerd out psychology wise, and this will be an extra hour. So, but I think it's, you find some where, yes, they are diagnosed, some prior to their crimes, some that are completely undiagnosed till after, and some that don't. But that's just a reflection of the general population too, I believe. It's more, I would say, Beckham, don't focus on that, but focus on like the triad of behaviors that statistically most of the offenders have in common. All right, Clifford saying Savannah, Georgia has the same thing, haunted tours.
Yeah.
I've had some friends go down to Georgia and they've done some of the haunted tours and they loved it. Loved it. So, all right. So again, thank you for everybody for joining us for this case of Marie Delphine LaLaurie. And thank you, Aunty Memie, not only for the suggestion, but for joining me for this case.
Thank you for having me on, even though it took me forever to get on.
You know what? Technical difficulties, all good, all good. All right, Russ. Okay, what's Russell saying before we bounce? The cemeteries there have above ground tombs because of all the flooding. The people who were buried, they get brought up to the surface in the floods.
Don't they bury them like on top of each other once they start sinking down? They just keep burying and burying. Aren't they good there for like a year and then they put somebody else in there? Is that what they do, Russell?
That's a great question.
That's what I've heard, so I don't know. He's been there before.
Yeah. Russell, quickly answer the question. Oh my God, that like disturbs me. Oh, I'm like afraid whatever the answer is either way.
That's how I heard. They're good for a year and then they put somebody else in there and then they just keep sinking into and they just keep.
Oh my God.
Next.
All right, we have an answer. Yes,
see?
multiple people stacked in above ground tombs. Oh my God. I know. Okay. I know this is not new information, but for me it is, and it's disturbing.
Yeah, that's what I was reading, and that's what somebody told me. And I just want, because I know Russell, he's been there. He's the man about town now. Come on.
You hear that, Russell? Those are, wow, you got a reputation. Hey, Barb, thank you for joining us. Barb says, yes, agreeing to that. Oh boy. Well, on that note, now that I need to get that out of my head. So thank you everybody for joining us. And again,
Thank you,
Aunty
everybody.
Memie for joining me for this case. And yeah, like Mimi said, she has some idea for some other cases. So maybe she'll be back for another collab. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. See you later in the week for my true crime and chill. And
Thank you for having
remember,
me.
until next time, we don't live in darkness. Darkness lives in us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.